handed my best friend a check for $50,000 to protect her son. But I ended up funding a nightmare where she tortured her own child just to secure an inheritance. I destroyed an innocent father's reputation and humiliated my husband, all because I was so desperate to be the hero in a story I did not understand. My name is Nadia Vance, and I am not just a victim. I am an accomplice. I invited a woman into my perfect home because she claimed she was fleeing a monster, but the real monster was the one sleeping in my guest room. I watched her weep about being poor while she stole my diamond earrings. I wrote viral posts attacking her ex-husband while she was secretly pinching her 5-year-old son to manufacture fresh bruises for court. My husband, Mark, tried to warn me. He saw the greed behind her tears, but I called him a coward and chose her over him. I was so blind. I let a predator use my bank account and my reputation to shatter a family. Now the truth is out. The money is gone, and my marriage is in ruins. How do you ever forgive yourself when your kindness was the weapon that hurt a child? Everyone says I should have known better, and they are right. What am I supposed to do now? My name is Nadia Vance. I am 38 years old, a lead interior designer for the most exclusive firm in Fairfield County, and I live in a house that most people would kill to own. It sits on a 2-acre lot in Westport, Connecticut, behind a wrought iron gate that screams old money. Even though my husband, Mark, and I are decidedly new money. Mark is a senior financial analyst, the kind of man who sees the world in spreadsheets and risk assessments. We are the perfect couple. We have the perfect lawn, manicured to the exact 1/4-inch specification of our overzealous homeowners association. We have the perfect dinner parties where we serve Pinot Noir that costs more than a car payment. But perfection is just a coat of paint. I should know. I make a living covering up cracks in walls and making empty rooms look like they have a soul. The truth is, I have a sickness. It is not something you will find in a medical journal, but it is there, festering under my skin. I have a desperate, gnawing need to fix broken things. I see a dilapidated Victorian house, and I need to restore it. I see a stray dog with a limp, and I need to bring it home. I see a person with a shattered life, and I need to be the glue that holds them together. It makes me feel valuable. It makes me feel necessary. Mark calls it my savior complex. I call it being a decent human being. But that night, as the digital clock on my bedside table flickered to 3 in the morning, my need to save someone was about to cost me everything. The phone rang. It was a sharp, intrusive sound that sliced through the silence of our master bedroom. Mark groaned beside me, shifting under the Egyptian cotton sheets that I had spent 45 minutes ironing the day before. I fumbled for my phone, my heart already hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I knew who it was before I even saw the screen. Only one person called me at this hour. Saluting Hauling. Dwa. Dana. I swiped the screen and pressed the phone to my ear. Nadia, please, you have to help me. Her voice was a jagged whisper, wet with tears. I sat up, clutching the duvet to my chest. The air in the room suddenly felt very cold. Dana? What is wrong? Where are you? He is crazy. Nadia, he is losing his mind. I locked myself in the bathroom, but I do not know how long the door will hold. I need to get Leo out of here. Please. I do not have anywhere else to go. My stomach dropped. She was talking about Jay, her ex-husband. For 5 years, I had listened to Dana's horror stories about him. The controlling behavior, the emotional abuse, the way he allegedly tracked her every move. I had never witnessed it firsthand, Of course, Jay always seemed so polite, so quiet at social gatherings. But abusers are good at hiding, are they not? That is what Dana always told me. I am coming to get you, I said, already swinging my legs out of bed. No, do not come here. He might see your car. I am going to make a run for it. I just need you to take Leo, just for the weekend, until I can get a restraining order or Xiao Yu Jing Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than or something. Please. Nadia, he trusts you. If he knows Leo is with you, he might calm down. I looked over at Mark. He was awake now, propped up on one elbow, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He looked annoyed, not worried, annoyed. Is that Dana? He asked, his voice rough with sleep. I covered the microphone with my hand. She is in trouble. Mark, Jay is threatening her again. She needs us to watch Leo. Mark let out a long, heavy sigh. He fell back onto his pillow and stared at the ceiling. Nadia, it is 3 a.m. Last month it was because her electricity got cut off. The month before that, she thought someone was following her. Do not get involved in their drama again. I felt a flash of irritation, hot and prickly. Look at him, so detached, so comfortable in his safe, sterile world. He does not understand what it is like to be hunted. He thinks everyone is as rational as a stock market graph. He has no heart, but I do. I have enough heart for both of us. She is terrified. Mark, I hissed, keeping my voice low. A child is involved. Leo is 5 years old. Are you telling me to go back to sleep while a 5-year-old is in danger? Mark turned his head to look at me. His eyes were narrow, calculating. I am saying that Dana has a history of exaggerating. Nadia, remember the time she said Jay slashed her tires, and it turned out she had just run over a curb? We need to be careful. If there is a real threat, call the police. Do not bring us into the middle of a custody war. Call the police. That was always his answer. He did not understand that the police could not fix everything. Sometimes, you needed a friend. I ignored him. I put the phone back to my ear. Bring him here. Dana, the gate code is still the same. We will keep him safe. Thank you. Oh God, thank you. Nadia, you are the only person in the world I can trust. You are my angel. The line went dead. I sat there for a moment in the dark, the silence returning to the room. But it felt heavier now, charged. Mark rolled over, turning his back to me. You are making a mistake, he mumbled into his pillow. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark, perfectly manicured street. The moonlight reflected off the hood of Mark's Porsche in the driveway. Everything looked so peaceful, so ordered, but I knew better. Chaos was coming up the driveway, and I had just opened the gate to let it in. He is just jealous, I thought to myself as I watched the empty road, waiting for headlights to appear. He is jealous that Dana relies on me. He wants me to be like him, cold and unfeeling, but I am not. I am the one who fixes things. Dana is broken, and I'm going to put her back together, even if I have to destroy my own peace to do it. 10 minutes later, headlights swept across the front lawn. I rushed downstairs, disabling the alarm system with practiced fingers. When I opened the heavy oak front door, Dana was already there, shivering in the cool night air. She looked frantic. Her hair was a mess, her makeup smeared, and she was clutching Leo's hand so tight that the little boy's knuckles were white. Leo looked tired, confused, holding a worn-out stuffed rabbit by the ears. He did not have any bags, just the clothes on his back. Dana threw her arms around me, sobbing into my shoulder. She smelled of nervous sweat and something else. Soyutsing Haoling. 2 hash is greater than something sharp, like peppermint mouthwash, probably to cover up the smell of anxiety sickness. He is gone, she gasped, pulling back to look at me with wide, terrified eyes. I waited until he passed out. Then I grabbed Leo and ran. He is going to kill me. Nadia, when he wakes up and finds us gone, he is going to kill me. I looked at Leo. He was staring up at me, his big brown eyes wide. He did not look like a child who had just escaped a war zone. He just looked sleepy. Did Daddy hurt you, baby? I asked, crouching down to his level. Leo opened his mouth to speak, but Dana squeezed his shoulder. He is in shock, she said quickly, her voice rising in pitch. He does not know what is happening. Just take him inside. Please, I need to go meet my lawyer. I need to file the papers before Jay wakes up. At 3 in the morning, Mark's voice came from the top of the stairs. I looked up. Mark was standing on the landing, wearing his robe, his arms crossed over his chest. He looked down at Dana with a gaze that could cut glass. Dana froze. She looked at Mark, then back at me, her lower lip trembling. My lawyer, Saoi Jing Haoling. 2 hash is greater than she is a friend. She said she would meet me at the 24-hour diner off the highway. We have to act fast. Mark did not move. He did not offer a comforting word. He just watched her, analyzing her like a fluctuating stock ticker. Red flags. That is what Mark would call them later. The late hour. The vague story. The lawyer meeting at a diner in the middle of the night. But in that moment, looking at my best friend shaking on my doorstep, I did not see red flags. I saw a damsel in distress, and I was the knight in shining armor. Go, I told her, standing up and taking Leo's hand. Go handle your business. Leo is safe here. Dana kissed Leo on the forehead, whispered something in his ear that I could not catch, and then ran back to her beat-up sedan. I watched her taillights disappear down the driveway, a sense of righteous purpose swelling in my chest. I turned to Mark, daring him to say something. He just shook his head and walked back into the bedroom, closing the door with a soft, final click. I looked down at the little boy holding my hand. Come on, Leo, I said softly. Let us get you some warm milk. I will show him, I thought as I led the boy into my pristine, silent kitchen. I will show Mark that being kind is not a weakness. I am saving this family, and when the dust settles, everyone will see that I was right. But as I poured the milk into a glass, my hand trembled slightly, just a little, because deep down, in a place I refused to acknowledge, a tiny voice was whispering that maybe, just maybe, Mark was right. The flight from Chicago had been delayed 3 hours, and by the time my taxi pulled up to the wrought iron gates of our home, the sun was already dipping below the horizon, casting long, bruised shadows across the lawn. I was exhausted. My bones felt heavy, my eyes gritty from the dry cabin air. But underneath the fatigue, there was a hum of anticipation. I was eager to see Leo. I had spent the last 2 days in client meetings, picking out fabrics and arguing about light fixtures. But my mind had been here, in Westport, worrying about the little boy we were protecting. I had bought him a toy on the trip, a small die-cast model of a vintage red truck. I gripped it in my hand as I walked up the stone path to the front door. The house was silent, too silent. Mark, I called out. dropping my keys on the foyer table. The sound echoed off the high ceilings. There was no answer. I walked into the living room, my heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floors. I found Mark asleep on the sofa. He was not wearing his usual crisp button-down shirt. He was in a wrinkled t-shirt, his arm thrown over his eyes. There was an empty glass of scotch on the coffee table. I felt a prickle of irritation. It was 6 in the evening. Mark never napped. "Mark?" I said, louder this time. He jolted awake, sitting up and blinking rapidly. When he saw me, his shoulders slumped, but not in relief. It looked like resignation. "You are back early," he said, his voice rough. "Where is Leo?" I asked, ignoring his comment. I looked around the room, expecting to see the boy playing with the iPad I had set up for him. The room was empty. The throw pillows were perfectly arranged. Mark rubbed his face with both hands. He took a deep breath, the kind of breath a man takes before he delivers bad news. "Jay came by this morning," Mark said. My heart stopped. The blood drained from my face so fast I felt dizzy. "He broke in? Did you call the police?" "Mark, tell me what happened." "He did not break in, Nadia," Mark said. Standing up, he rang the doorbell. He had his mother-in-law, Barbara, with him. They wanted to see Leo. Barbara said it had been weeks since she saw her grandson. "And you told them to leave, right?" I took a step toward him, my hands balling into fists. "You told them he was safe here and they needed to get off our property." Mark looked me in the eye. His expression was maddeningly calm. "I let them take him for lunch." "Nadia," the world tilted. I felt a roaring sound in my ears, like a rushing waterfall. "You did what?" My voice was a whisper, but it felt like a scream in my throat. "They were perfectly civil," Mark explained, holding his hands up as if to ward off a physical blow. "Barbara was there the whole time. Jay was polite. He showed me court papers that say he still has visitation rights until a judge says otherwise. I could not legally stop him, and honestly, the kid ran to him." "Nadia?" "Leo ran to him. I did not hear the logic. I only heard the betrayal. He gave him up. I trusted him with the most precious thing in the world, a defenseless child running from a monster. And Mark just handed him over like he was returning a library book. He does not care. He never cared. He thinks this is a game. He thinks abuse is something you can negotiate with legal papers. You are a coward." I spat the words at him. "You handed a child to his abuser because you were too weak to stand your ground." "Nadia." "Stop," Mark said, his voice hardening. "Jay brought him back an hour ago. Leo is fine. He is in the guest room playing. Nothing happened." "He is not fine. You do not know what happens behind closed doors," I screamed. I turned away from him, unable to look at his reasonable, treacherous face. I marched toward the guest room, but before I could reach the hallway, the front doorbell rang. It was a frantic, continuous buzzing. I rushed to the door and threw it open. Dana stood there. She looked like she had been running. Her face was pale, her eyes wild and rimmed with red. She pushed past me into the foyer, her head whipping around. "Where is he?" she gasped. "Is he okay? Tell me he is okay." "He is in the guest room," I said, grabbing her arm to steady her. "Dana, calm down." She pulled away from me and ran toward the back of the house. I followed her, shooting a venomous look at Mark, who was standing in the living room doorway, looking weary. We burst into the guest room. Leo was sitting on the floor, building a tower with blocks. When he saw his mother, he smiled. "Saoyuting Haling, too," Mommy. Dana fell to her knees. She grabbed the boy, pulling him into an embrace so tight I worried she might crush his ribs. Then she pulled back, her hands frantic. She rolled up his sleeves. She lifted his shirt. She checked his neck. Did he hit you? She demanded, her voice high and piercing. Did Daddy hurt you? Did he twist your arm? Tell Mommy the truth. Leo looked confused. He shook his head. No. Mommy, we had pizza. Dana let out a sob, a ragged sound that tore at my heart. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. He is too scared to talk. She whispered, look at him. Nadia, look at his eyes. He is dissociated. Jay terrorized him. I know he did. He probably told Leo that if he said anything, he would hurt me. That is what he does. He uses fear. I looked at Leo. He just looked like a boy who wanted to keep playing with his blocks. But Dana was the mother. She knew her son better than anyone. If she saw trauma, then it was there, hidden deep where Mark's cold logic could not see it. Poor little angel. He has learned to hide his pain so well. Just like Dana, they have been conditioned to suffer in silence. And Mark let this happen. This is my fault. I should never have left. I knelt beside Dana and put a hand on her shoulder. I am so sorry. Dana, I am so sorry. Mark, Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than he did not understand. Dana turned to me, gripping my hand with icy fingers. He knows where we are now. Nadia, he knows he can get to us. The restraining order hearing is not for another 2 weeks. He will come back. He will take Leo, and I will never see him again. She buried her face in her hands. Unless Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling, or Jing Hao Dayu. Unless what? I asked urgently. Unless I get a shark, she said into her palms. There is a lawyer in the city, Robert Thorne. He is expensive, but he destroys men like Jay. He can get an emergency custody order signed by a judge tomorrow morning. But Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling, 2 hash is greater than, but what? He requires a retainer. She choked out, a big one, and Jay froze all my accounts. I have nothing. Nadia, I am going to lose my son because I do not have money. I did not hesitate. The guilt was a physical weight in my chest, crushing my lungs. My husband had endangered this child. It was my duty to fix it. How much? I asked. Dana looked up. Her eyes were swimming with tears, wide and vulnerable. $50,000, she whispered. I heard Mark's footsteps behind me in the hallway. I knew he was listening. I knew he would object. I knew he would talk about budgets and verification and due diligence. I stood up, squaring my shoulders. I will write the check, I said, my voice steady and loud enough for Mark to hear. Nadia. Mark's voice came from the doorway. A warning tone. Do not do this. You cannot just hand over $50,000 based on Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling, or Jing Hao Dayu. I spun around to face him. My eyes felt hot. Be quiet. Mark, you lost your right to speak when you opened that door for Jay Sterling. You broke this safety. I am buying it back. I walked past him, bumping his shoulder intentionally. I went into my home office and pulled the checkbook from the top drawer. My hand shook as I wrote the date, but my strokes were firm when I wrote out the amount. $50,000. It was a lot of money, even for us. It was the money we had set aside for the renovations on the lake house. But what was a renovation compared to a child's life? Mark thinks about money. I think about people. That is the difference between us. He sees a check. I see a shield. I am buying Dana a shield. I tore the check from the book. The sound was sharp, like a fabric tearing. I walked back to the guest room and pressed the paper into Dana's hand. Go, I said. Get that lawyer. Destroy him. Dana looked at the check, then at me. A fresh wave of tears spilled over her lashes. You are saving my life, Nadia, she whispered. I hugged her, feeling the frailty of her frame. Over her shoulder, I saw Mark standing in the hallway. He was not angry anymore. He was looking at me with an expression I could not quite place. It looked like pity. I tightened my arms around my friend. I did not want his pity. I wanted to be right. And as Dana wept gratitude into my designer blouse, I felt that familiar rush of the savior. I was the hero of this story. I just had to be. The house had become a battleground, not with shouting matches or thrown vases, but with a silence that was far more corrosive. Mark and I moved around each other like ghosts, polite but distant. He slept in the guest room now, claiming he had late-night conference calls with Tokyo. But I knew the truth. He could not look at me without seeing the check I had written, and I could not look at him without seeing the man who had let a monster walk away with a child. 3 days after I gave Dana the money, Mark called in sick to work. I found him in the kitchen at 8 in the morning, nursing a cup of black coffee. He was dressed in jeans and a nondescript navy sweater, not his usual suit. I am going out, he said simply, not meeting my eyes. Where? I asked, leaning against the marble island. Just errands. He left before I could ask more. I watched his Porsche back out of the driveway, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. Mark never took days off for errands. He is up to something. I thought, he cannot let it go. He is going to try to prove me wrong. He is going to try to dig up dirt on Dana to justify his own cowardice. I tried to focus on my work. I had swatches to approve for the Henderson estate, but the colors all looked dull to me. Around noon, my phone pinged with a text from Dana. Lawyer is a shark. He is filing the emergency motion today. You are my hero. I smiled, feeling a brief flicker of validation. See, I was helping. I was making a difference. But Mark was not running errands. He was driving 2 hours north, to a gritty, industrial town called Waterbury. He had found the address on an old Christmas card Dana had sent years ago, back when she still pretended to have a relationship with her family. It was the address of Barbara Miller, Dana's mother. I learned all of this later. Of course, at the time, I was blissfully ignorant, sipping herbal tea and feeling self-righteous. Mark found the apartment complex easily enough. It was a brick building with peeling paint and a rusted fire escape clinging to the side like a dead vine. He buzzed the intercom for 4B. Who is it? A raspy female voice crackled. Mrs. Miller? My name is Mark Vance. I am a friend of Dana's. I have something for you. From Jay. It was a lie. A calculated risk. Mark knew that if he said he was Dana's friend, she might not let him in. But mentioning Jay? That was the bait. The buzzer sounded, and the heavy door clicked open. Mark climbed the 4 flights of stairs. Barbara Miller was waiting in the doorway. She was a small woman with dyed blonde hair that was showing gray at the roots, wearing a floral housecoat that had seen better days. Her eyes, sharp and bead-like, scanned Mark from his expensive shoes to his designer watch. You are the one with the Porsche, she said. I saw you when Jay dropped off the kid. That is right, Mark said, putting on his best charming financial advisor smile. Can I come in? I just wanted to clear up some confusion about the 小雨景好灵. 2 dièse est supérieur à arrangement. She stepped aside, and Mark entered an apartment that smelled of stale cigarette smoke and cat litter. It was cluttered with porcelain figurines and stacks of old magazines. What arrangement? Barbara asked, narrowing her eyes. Jay said he would handle everything. Mark sat on the edge of a worn velvet sofa, careful not to touch the sticky-looking armrest. Well, that is the thing. Barbara. Jay is worried. He thinks Dana is going to make a scene. He is thinking about Howling. 2# is greater than cutting off the support. Barbara's face transformed. The suspicion vanished, replaced by panic. He cannot do that. She squawked. We had a deal. He said if I vouched for him, if I told the social worker he was a good dad, he would take care of my debts. He promised. Mark kept his face neutral, though his heart must have been pounding. He leaned forward, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. I know, Barbara, I know, but you know how lawyers are. They are telling him to protect his assets, especially now. Now? What do you mean? Now, with the inheritance. Mark dropped the bomb gently. Barbara snorted, waving a hand dismissively. Oh, please. That $10 million? He thinks he can hide that from us? My Dana is smart. She knows about the uncle in Texas. She knows exactly how much he got. Why do you think she started this whole abuse circus again right now? Mark froze. He had suspected it, but hearing it confirmed so bluntly was like a punch to the gut. She, Howling. 2# is greater than she knows about the money? Mark asked, keeping his tone casual. Of course she knows. Barbara laughed. A harsh, grating sound. She has been tracking that old man's health for 2 years. The second he kicked the bucket, Dana called me. She said, Mama, it is payday. She needs that full custody to get the leverage. Child support on a $10 million estate. That is a golden ticket. Honey, Mark stood up. He had heard enough. He felt sick. The image of Nadia writing that $50,000 check burned in his mind. So, Mark said, his voice tight, there was no abuse? Jay never hit Leo? Barbara rolled her eyes. Jay? That softy? He would not hurt a fly. The only person who ever threw a plate in that house was Dana. But hey, a girl has got to do what a girl has got to do, right? You tell Jay to stick to the deal. I keep my mouth shut. I get my cut. Mark walked out of that apartment without another word. He drove back to Westport in a daze. The radio off. The hum of the engine, the only sound in his world. When he walked into our kitchen that evening, I was chopping vegetables for a salad. He looked pale, almost gray. We need to talk, he said. I put down the knife. What is it now? Mark, did you find a receipt that proves Dana bought a coffee with my money? He ignored my sarcasm. He walked over and placed his hands on the counter. Leaning in close, I went to see Barbara. I froze. You did what? She told me everything. Nadia, there is no abuse. Jay is not a monster. He just inherited $10 million. And Dana is trying to use Leo to get a piece of it. It is a shakedown. And you, Howling. 2 hekje is groter dan wij. Howling. 2# is greater than our funding it. I stared at him. For a moment, the words hung in the air, heavy and terrible. $10 million? Shakedown? Then, a wall slammed down in my mind. No, this was too convenient. This was exactly the kind of story a man like Mark would believe. It was all about money to him. You are lying, I said, my voice shaking. Or she is lying. Barbara is an addict. Mark, Dana told me. She has a gambling problem. Jay probably paid her off to say that. Nadia, listen to me. Sao Ting Hao Ling. R. Ting Hao Da Yu. No. You listen to me. I slammed my hand on the counter. You cannot stand that I am right. You cannot stand that I am helping her. You are so obsessed with being the rational one that you are siding with an abuser and a gambling addict over your own wife? He is trying to gaslight me. I thought frantically. He is trying to make me doubt my own sanity. I saw the fear in Dana's eyes. You cannot fake that. You cannot fake a mother's terror. Mark looked at me, and for the first time in our 10 years of marriage, I saw something die in his eyes. It was respect. You are blind, Nadia, he said quietly, and your blindness is going to destroy innocent people. He turned and walked out of the kitchen. I stood there, trembling, surrounded by the perfect stainless steel appliances of my perfect kitchen. I picked up the knife again and started chopping the cucumber. The slices were uneven, jagged. He is wrong, I told myself, the blade hitting the cutting board with a rhythmic thud. He is wrong. He is wrong. He is wrong. But as I chopped, a cold sliver of doubt, sharp as the knife in my hand, lodged itself in my heart. What if Sao Ting Hao Ling 2 hash is greater than what if he is not? The guest room had become a fortress, and Dana was its queen. It had been a week since Mark's trip to Waterbury, a week of suffocating tension. Mark had retreated into a shell of polite silence, working late every night, leaving before I woke up. I told myself I did not care. I had Dana. I had Leo. I had a mission. But the mission was starting to feel less like a rescue and more like an occupation. Dana had officially moved in for safety reasons while her lawyer prepared the case. My once pristine home was now littered with her presence. There were piles of laundry on the living room sofa that never seemed to make it to the washing machine. There were half-eaten cartons of takeout on the coffee table. One evening, I came home from work to find Dana in the kitchen, dumping the contents of my refrigerator into the trash. What are you doing? I asked, dropping my purse on the counter. Oh, hey, Dana chirped. She did not look like a terrified victim anymore. She looked energized. I am just clearing out all this processed junk. Did you know the nitrates in this deli meat are carcinogenic? Leo has a very sensitive system. We need to switch to organic. Fully organic. I stared at the pile of perfectly good food in the bin. Dana, that is $300 worth of groceries. I know, she said, wrinkling her nose. But can you really put a price on health? Besides, I made a list for your housekeeper. I told her to go to Whole Foods tomorrow. My jaw tightened. My housekeeper, Maria, had been with us for 5 years. She was a saint. You told Maria what to buy? Well, someone had to. She was going to make spaghetti with jarred sauce tonight. Jarred sauce. Nadia, it is practically poison. I told her to make everything from scratch. I took a deep breath. She is stressed. I told myself, control is a coping mechanism. She feels out of control with Jay, so she is trying to control her environment here. Be patient. It was not just the food. It was the attitude, the entitlement. 2 days later, I was looking for my car keys. I had a client meeting in Greenwich, and I was running late. Has anyone seen my keys? I called out. Dana walked into the hallway, wearing one of my silk robes. She was sipping a green smoothie. Oh, I borrowed the Mercedes, she said casually. I had to meet Robert. Sao Ting Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than the lawyer. My car is making that weird noise again, and I did not want to risk breaking down with Leo. I stared at her. You took my car? Without asking? Nadia, relax. I put gas in it. Well, I used the credit card you left in the glove box, but I put gas in it. I felt a vain throb in my temple. It was not about the car. It was about the boundary, the line that was being erased, bit by bit. And why are you wearing my robe? She looked down at the silk, smoothing it over her hip. Oh, this? I spilled coffee on mine. You have so many. I did not think you would mind. We are practically sisters, right? Sisters. Yes, that is what I wanted. But sisters respect each other. Sisters do not treat each other like servants. That night, things got worse. Mark came home early for once. He walked into the living room and found Leo sitting on the floor, staring at the TV. Dana was on the phone on the patio, laughing loudly. Where is his mother? Mark asked, nodding at Leo. She is on a call with her support group. I lead. Mark looked at the screen. Leo was watching a violent cartoon. Something with explosions and screaming. He should not be watching this, Mark said, picking up the remote and turning it off. Leo started to cry. A high, thin wail. Dana burst in from the patio. What did you do to him? She shrieked at Mark. I turned off the TV. Mark said calmly, it is not appropriate for a 5-year-old. You do not tell me how to raise my son, Dana yelled, stepping into Mark's personal space. You are just like Jay, controlling, domineering. You think because you have money, you can dictate everything. Mark looked at her, then at me. I am going to a hotel, he said quietly. No, Mark, do not. So you, Jinghaling, 2# is greater than I started. Let him go. Nadia, Dana interrupted, her voice dripping with venom. It is better this way. He is toxic. Cannot you see it? He hates that you are strong. He hates that you are helping me. Mark stopped at the door. He looked at me with sad, tired eyes. Check your jewelry box. Nadia, he said. Saoyuting howling. 2# is greater than what? Just check it. He walked out. I stood there, my heart pounding. Dana was still fuming, muttering about toxic masculinity. What did he mean? I asked her, who knows? He is trying to drive a wedge between us. It is classic gaslighting. Ignore him. But I could not ignore him. Later that night, when Dana was asleep, I went into my closet. I opened the velvet-lined drawer where I kept my jewelry. My diamond stud earrings were gone, the ones Mark gave me for our 5th anniversary. I felt a cold sweat break out on my neck. I searched the drawer. I searched the box. I searched the floor. They were gone. Maybe I misplaced them. I thought frantically. Maybe I left them at the gym. Maybe. Saoyu Jinghaoling. Jinghao Dayu. But then I remembered the traffic camera ticket that had arrived in the mail that morning. Addressed to me. I had not opened it yet. I went downstairs and retrieved it from the recycling bin. I ripped open the envelope. It was a photo of my Mercedes, speeding through a red light in Stamford 2 days ago. But it was not me driving. It was Dana, and she was not going to a lawyer's office. I could clearly see the storefronts in the background. She was near the luxury mall, and there, hanging from her ear, catching the glint of the sun, was a diamond stud. I sat down on the kitchen floor, the photo trembling in my hand. She stole from me. She lied to me. She is using me. But then, the other voice in my head, the desperate one, spoke up. Maybe she needed to sell them to pay the lawyer. Maybe the 50,000 was not enough? She is desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. It does not mean she is evil. It just means she is scared. I was spiraling. I was drowning in a sea of excuses, clutching at straws to keep my world from shattering. Because if Dana was a liar, then Mark was right. And if Mark was right, Saoyuting Haoling, 2# is greater than then. I was the villain in my own story, and that was a truth I was not yet ready to face. The envelope from the court arrived on a Tuesday morning. It was thick, heavy, and emblazoned with the seal of the family court. Dana snatched it from the mail pile before I could even read the return address, her fingers tearing at the paper with frantic energy. "He did it," she hissed, scanning the documents. "The bastard actually did it." "What?" I asked, looking up from my laptop. "Jay, he filed for full custody. He is claiming I am the unfit parent. He says I am unstable. He says I neglect Leo." She threw the papers onto the kitchen island. They slid across the marble and stopped in front of me. I looked down at the dense legal jargon. Neglect, substance abuse, financial instability. "It is a lie," Dana screamed, pacing the kitchen. "He is projecting. That is what narcissists do. They accuse you of exactly what they are doing." Then she stopped. A strange, calculated look crossed her face. She pulled her phone out of her pocket. "I have to show you something, Nadia." I did not want to. Saoyuting Hao Ling, 2# is greater than I was trying to protect you from how bad it really is. But now, Saoyuting Hao Ling, 2# is greater than now you need to see. She swiped through her photo gallery and shoved the phone in my face. It was a picture of Leo. He was shirtless, and on his upper arm, there were 3 distinct purple bruises. They looked fresh, angry. I gasped, covering my mouth with my hand. "Oh my God, Dana, Saoyuting Hao Ling, 2# is greater than, when was this?" "Last week," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "Before I brought him here, I took the picture, but I was too scared to show anyone. I thought if I just got him away." Saoyuting Hao Ling, 2# is greater than. But now Jay is trying to take him back to that house of horrors. You cannot let him. Nadia, you have to help me fight. Something inside me snapped. The doubt, the missing earrings, the entitled behavior. It all vanished in the face of that image. A bruised child, my godson. I felt a surge of adrenaline, hot and blinding. I will not let him take Leo. I vowed. I opened my laptop. I logged into Facebook. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Fueled by righteous fury, I wrote a post titled, "The Monster Behind the Mask." I did not use Jay's full name, but I described him in enough detail that anyone in our social circle would know. I wrote about the bravery of a mother protecting her child. I wrote about the bruises. I wrote about the failure of the system. Saoyuting Hao Ling, Dve. I hit post. Within hours, it had hundreds of shares. Comments poured in, vilifying Jay, calling for justice. I felt powerful. I was using my voice to protect the innocent. That night, the house was quiet. Dana had gone to bed early, claiming a migraine from the stress. I sat in the living room, reading the supportive comments on my post, feeling a grim satisfaction. Mark was still at the hotel. I missed him, but I told myself he would understand eventually. When he saw the bruises, he would understand. Around 2 a.m, I woke up thirsty. I padded downstairs to the kitchen for a glass of water. As I passed the guest room, I heard a sound. It was a low whimper. I froze. Was Leo having a nightmare? I crept closer to the door. It was slightly ajar. A sliver of light from the hallway spilled into the room. I peered inside. Dana was sitting on the edge of a bed. Leo was asleep beside her, his small chest rising and falling. Dana was hunched over him. She was whispering something, her voice low and harsh. "Stay still, you little brat." I saw her hand move. She reached out and pinched the soft flesh of Leo's inner thigh. Hard. She twisted her fingers, digging her nails in. Leo whimpered in his sleep, his leg twitching. But he did not wake up. He was exhausted. Or maybe Saoyuting howling. 2 hashes greater than maybe he was used to it. Dana did it again. Pinch. Twist. I watched, paralyzed, as a new red mark began to bloom on the boy's pale skin. My brain stopped working. The world dissolved into static. No, 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 no. That is not Saoyuting howling. 2 hashes greater than she is not. Saoyuting howling. Ting hao dayu. She is hurting him. Dana is hurting him. The realization hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. I staggered back, my hand clamping over my mouth to stifle a scream. I backed away from the door, my legs trembling so violently I could barely stand. I retreated to the kitchen, leaning against the cold refrigerator, gasping for air. The pictures, the bruises on his arm, they were not from Jay. They were from her. She was manufacturing the abuse. She was hurting her own child to frame her husband. And Saoyuting howlin, Ting hao dayu. I looked down at my hands, the hands that had written the check, the hands that had typed the Facebook post. I was not the savior. I was the accomplice. I slid down the refrigerator door until I hit the floor. I pulled my knees to my chest and rocked back and forth. A silent scream tearing through my throat. Everything was a lie. The tears, the fear, the monster husband. The monster was in my guest room, and I had invited her in. And now, I had destroyed an innocent man's reputation. I had funded a torture chamber for a 5-year-old boy. The horror was total. It was absolute. There was no going back from this. The bridge was burned, and I was standing on the side of the devil. I needed to vomit. I scrambled to the sink and retched, my body rejecting the sickness of the truth. When I finally lifted my head, wiping my mouth with a trembling hand, the face that looked back at me from the window reflection was not Nadia Vance, the benevolent savior. It was Nadia Vance, the fool, the weapon. But as the shock began to recede, something else took its place. A cold, hard knot of rage. She had played me. She had hurt a child. She had destroyed my marriage. I wiped my face. I stood up. I was done being the victim. I was done being the fool. Dana Miller had wanted a savior? Fine. But she was about to find out that sometimes saviors carry swords. The next morning, I was a ghost in my own home. I moved mechanically, making coffee, setting out breakfast, smiling my fake, brittle smile when Dana walked into the kitchen. Morning. "Iro," she said, pouring herself a cup of coffee. She looked refreshed, happy even. Leo was trailing behind her, walking with a slight limp. My heart seized. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab a knife and drive it into the granite countertop. Instead, I poured milk into Leo's cereal bowl. "Hey, buddy," I said softly. "How did you sleep?" "Okay," he whispered, not looking up. Dana ruffled his hair. "He is a tough cookie, just like his mom." I gripped the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. "I have to go to the office," I said abruptly. "Big project." I grabbed my purse and fled. I did not go to the office. I drove to a park on the other side of town, sat in my car, and called the number Mark had left on the kitchen counter days ago. The number for Jay's lawyer, please, I said to the receptionist, my voice cracking. Just tell him, Sayuting Haoling, 2# is greater than tell him I know. Tell him I want to help. An hour later, I was sitting in a quiet, dimly lit booth at a coffee shop 3 towns over. Jay Sterling walked in. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his shoulders were hunched as if he were carrying the weight of the world. He did not look like a monster. He looked broken. He sat down opposite me. He did not order anything. He just looked at me with a mixture of wariness and hope. Why are you here, Nadia? He asked quietly. After that post, Sayuting Haoling, 2# is greater than why are you here? I swallowed the lump in my throat because I saw her. Last night, I saw her pinch him. Jay, I saw her making the bruises. Jay closed his eyes. A long, shuddering breath escaped him. Thank God, he whispered. Thank God someone finally saw. He opened his laptop. I want to show you the truth. Nadia, not stories, not tears, evidence. He played the videos. They were from the security cameras inside their old house. Video 1, Dana, staggering drunk in the living room at 2 in the afternoon, throwing a wine glass at the wall, inches from Leo's head. Video 2, Dana screaming into the phone. I do not care if he is crying. I am going out. Leave him in the crib, while Leo wailed in the background. Video 3, Dana sitting at the kitchen table, calmly applying makeup to her eye to create a fake bruise, checking her reflection in the mirror like an artist inspecting a canvas. Then came the financial records, bank statements showing the $20,000 a month Jay sent her. Credit card bills showing $50,000 spent in 3 months on designer handbags, spa treatments, and online gambling sites. And finally, a letter from a private school. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, we regret to inform you that Leo has been expelled due to excessive absences and hygiene concerns. Sayuting Haoling, R. Jinghao Dayu. I watched it all. Every second tore a new hole in my soul. Sayuting Haoling, 2# is greater than I gave her $50,000. I confessed, tears streaming down my face. I thought she was using it for a lawyer. Jay shook his head sadly. She does not have a lawyer. Nadia, Robert Thorne? He fired her as a client 2 years ago because she tried to pay him with a bad check. She is pocketing your money. She is hoarding cash to run away again. The weight of my stupidity was crushing. I had financed this. I had paid for her to torture her son. I had destroyed this man's life. I am so sorry. Jay, I am so sorry. Jay reached across the table and touched my hand. His grip was firm. Apologies do not help Leo. Nadia, action does. She has the upper hand right now. Your Facebook post, Sayuting Haoling, 2# is greater than it turned the court of public opinion against me. The judge is hesitant to give me custody because of the public outcry. We need something undeniable. We need to catch her in the act. In a way she cannot spin. I wiped my face. The rage was back, colder and sharper than before. She thinks she has won. I said, she thinks I am her puppet. Jay nodded. That is her weakness, her arrogance. I looked at him. I have cameras. I said, I installed a nanny cam in the living room months ago to watch a new housekeeper. I forgot about it, but it is still there. It records to a cloud server. Jay's eyes widened. Is it recording now? Soiting Haling. Ketu. Ketu. Yes, then we have a chance, he said. But we have to be smart. If you confront her now, she will run. She will take Leo and disappear. We need to catch her confessing. We need to catch her planning. I nodded slowly. I knew what I had to do. I had to go back to that house. I had to smile at the woman who was abusing my godson. I had to be the friend she thought I was. I had to be the perfect actress. I will do it, I said. I will get you everything you need. I left the coffee shop and drove home. My hands were steady on the wheel. My tears were dried. When I walked through the door, Dana was on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. Hey, she said brightly. How was work? I walked over and sat down beside her. I forced my mouth into a smile. It was great, I said. And guess what? I was thinking, Saoiting Haling. 2# is greater than J is going to fight dirty, right? We need to be ready. We need to secure your future. Dana's eyes lit up. What do you mean? I leaned in closer, dropping my voice. If things go south, Saoiting Haling. 2# is greater than you need a nest egg. A real one. Maybe we should look into moving some assets around. Dana smiled. It was the smile of a predator looking at a wounded gazelle. I knew I could count on you. Nadia, she purred. You are the best friend a girl could ask for. I hugged her. I felt her cold, bony shoulder against my chest. Enjoy it while it lasts. Dana, I thought, staring at the hidden camera lens on the bookshelf across the room. Because the storm is coming, and this time, I am the one bringing the thunder. The air in the house was thick with deceit. Every smile I gave Dana felt like a shard of glass in my mouth. Every time I saw her touch Leo, a jolt of electricity shot through my spine, urging me to tackle her, to scream, to drag her out by her hair. But I held back. I was playing the long game now. I went into the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were hard, unrecognizable. You are an actress, I told my reflection. The greatest actress of your generation. The curtain is up. I pulled out my phone and opened the app connected to the hidden camera in the living room. I scrolled back to the timestamp from earlier that morning, just after I had left to meet Jay. On the screen, Dana was pacing the room, phone pressed to her ear. Listen to me. Mama, her voice tinny through the speaker. It is going perfectly. The idiot actually believes me. She thinks Jay is the devil incarnate. She laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that made my skin crawl. Yeah, I know. I saw the post she wrote. It is brilliant. Jay is finished. His business is tanking. Once I get full custody, I will squeeze him for every penny of that inheritance. $10 million. Mama, can you imagine? She paused, listening to her mother on the other end. No, Nadia won't suspect a thing. She is so desperate to be the hero. It is pathetic. Really, I just have to squeeze out a few tears. Maybe put a little makeup on Leo's arm to freshen up those bruises. And she hands over her checkbook. I already pawned those diamond earrings I swiped. Got $5 grand for them. Easy money. I stopped the video. My hand was shaking. Not with fear, but with a cold, focused fury. She called me pathetic. She called me an idiot. She was right. I had been an idiot, but not anymore. I walked out of the bathroom and found Dana in the kitchen, eating a yogurt. Hey, I said, keeping my voice light. I have been thinking about what we discussed. About the assets. Dana looked up, interested. Yeah? I pulled up a chair. Look, Mark and I. Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. 2 is greater than things are bad. After he let Jay take Leo that day, I do not think I can ever forgive him. I am going to divorce him. Dana's eyes widened. Really? Yes. I am meeting with a divorce lawyer tomorrow. But here is the thing. Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. 2 is greater than Mark is vindictive. If he knows I am leaving, he will try to freeze everything. I need to move some cash out of our joint accounts before I file. I saw the greed flicker in her eyes. It was instantaneous. How much are we talking? She asked. About 200,000. I lied smoothly. I was thinking, Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. 2 is greater than maybe I could transfer it to you? Just temporarily, until the divorce is final. Then you give it back, and I will give you Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. Ikki. Sigh. 20% for your trouble? $40,000. Just for holding money. Dana licked her lips. That sounds... Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. Dva. Risky. Nadia. But for you, I would do it. I smiled. You are a lifesaver. But we need to be careful. We need a plan. Can you write down exactly how we should do it? You know, so we do not make mistakes. Maybe we can say it is a loan or payment for Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. 2 is greater than consulting? I pushed a notepad and pen toward her. Dana grabbed the pen. She was salivating. Her narcissism made her believe she was smarter than everyone, that she could outmaneuver the banking system, the courts, and me. Sure, she muttered, starting to scribble. We can draft a fake loan agreement. I will say I provided interior design consultation for your firm. We can backdate it. She wrote it all down. The fake invoices, the plan to hide the money, the admission that it was all a scheme to hide assets from Mark. While she wrote, I subtly angled my phone, recording her hand moving across the paper, capturing her voice as she explained the illegal details. This is perfect, she said, tearing off the page and handing it to me. We will be rich. Nadia, just you and me. No men to tell us what to do. I took the paper. It felt like holding a stick of dynamite. The next day, Mark came home. It was part of the plan. He walked in, looking disheveled, playing the part of the defeated husband perfectly. I am here to get some clothes, he mumbled, avoiding eye contact with Dana. I met him in the hallway. I handed him the paper Dana had written on. I handed him a USB drive with the video of Dana confessing to her mother and the video of her planning the fraud with me. Is this it? He whispered. This is it. I said, give it to Jay's lawyer. Mark looked at me. For the first time in weeks, there was warmth in his eyes. You are brave. Nadia, I am not brave. I said, I am just cleaning up my mess. The day of the hearing arrived 2 days later. Dana was dressed in a modest gray suit, wearing minimal makeup to look tired and sympathetic. She held my hand as we walked into the courthouse. You are my rock, she whispered. I squeezed her hand. I am your anchor, Dana, and I am about to drag you to the bottom. We sat in the courtroom. Jay was on the other side, looking solemn. His lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Miss Kincaid, sat beside him. The judge, a stern man with wire-rimmed glasses, called the session to order. Dana's lawyer, a court-appointed attorney who looked overworked, stood up. Your Honor, we are here to request an emergency protective order and full custody for Miss Miller. We have evidence of physical abuse against the minor child, Leo Sterling. We have photographs. We have witness testimony from Miss Nadia Vance. Who has provided shelter for the mother and child? The judge looked at me. Miss Vance, you are prepared to testify. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but my voice was steady. Yes, Your Honor. I walked to the stand. I swore on the Bible. Miss Vance, Dana's lawyer began. Can you tell the court what you have observed since Miss Miller and her son came to stay with you? I looked at Dana. She was nodding encouragingly, her eyes wide and innocent. I took a deep breath. I observed a mother who is terrified. I began. Dana nodded harder, terrified that her source of income is about to be cut off. I continued. Dana froze. The nod stopped mid-motion. Excuse me? Her lawyer asked, confused. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, I have been manipulated. The bruises on Leo's arm were not caused by his father. I saw Dana Miller inflict them herself. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Dana stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. She is lying, she screamed. She is working with him. She is jealous. Sit down. Miss Miller, the judge barked. I continued, my voice rising over the commotion. I have video evidence. Your Honor, video of her admitting to her mother that the abuse is a fabrication to extort money from Mr. Sterling's inheritance. Video of her physically abusing her son to create evidence. Video of her conspiring to commit fraud. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket and held it up. Miss Kincaid, Jay's lawyer, stood up. Your Honor, we moved to submit this digital evidence to the court immediately. Dana lost it. The mask did not just slip, it shattered. You bitch, she shrieked, lunging toward the witness stand. You traitorous bitch, I will kill you. 2 bailiffs grabbed her before she could reach me. She thrashed in their grip, her face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. She was spitting, cursing, her eyes bulging. Look at her, I said quietly into the microphone. That is the real Dana Miller. The judge watched the scene with a look of disgust. Bailiffs, restrain the plaintiff, he ordered. As they dragged her back to her seat, Dana locked eyes with me. You are dead. Nadia, she screamed. You hear me? You are dead. I looked back at her, unflinching. No, Dana, I said softly, though no one but the court reporter heard me. I am finally awake. The sound of the gavel striking the wooden block was not the loud, dramatic bang I expected. It was a dull thud, heavy and final. It signaled the end of the chaos inside the courtroom. But for me, it was only the beginning of a different kind of storm. The judge granted full custody to Jay Sterling immediately. He issued a permanent restraining order against Dana Miller and ordered a psychiatric evaluation. As the bailiffs escorted a sobbing, handcuffed Dana out of the side door, I looked across the aisle at Jay. He did not look triumphant. He looked exhausted. He was holding Leo, who had been brought in by a social worker. The boy was clinging to his father's neck, his face buried in the crook of Jay's shoulder. Jay looked at me, gave a single, ear-tin nod, and turned away. That nod was forgiveness. Perhaps, but it was also a dismissal. My role was done. I walked out of the courthouse into the blinding afternoon sun. Mark was waiting for me by the car. He did not say anything. He just opened the door. We drove home in silence. When we turned into our neighborhood, the pristine lawns and white picket fences looked the same as they always did, but they felt different. They felt like walls. The fallout began before we even pulled into the driveway. My phone, which I had silenced during the hearing, was vibrating incessantly against my thigh. I pulled it out. The notifications were a blur. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I had deleted my original post, the one titled "The Monster Behind the Mask," right before the hearing. But on the internet, nothing is ever truly deleted. Screenshots were circulating, and now, alongside them, were the news articles that had just broken. Local woman frames husband for abuse. Loses custody. Wealthy interior designer implicated in smear campaign. I tapped on a notification. It was a comment on my business page. You destroyed an innocent man's reputation without a shred of proof. I hope you lose your license. Shame on you. Another one. Imagine having so much money and so little brain. You are just as bad as the abuser. And another. I used to admire your work, Nadia. Now I just see a woman who enables child abuse. I dropped the phone into the cup holder as if it were burning hot. My hands were shaking. I did the right thing in the end. I whispered, looking at Mark. I fixed it. Mark kept his eyes on the road. You stopped it. Nadia, you did not fix it. Jay's company lost 3 major contracts because of that post. His name will be attached to those accusations forever in search engines. You cannot fix that. We pulled into the driveway. I saw my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, tending to her hydrangeas. She was the head of the homeowners association, a woman who usually waved frantically whenever she saw me. I stepped out of the car. Mrs. Gable looked up. Her eyes met mine. Hello, Sarah, I called out, my voice sounding thin and desperate. Mrs. Gable did not wave. She did not smile. She looked at me for a long, uncomfortable second, then turned her back and walked into her house, closing the door firmly behind her. The silence of the street was deafening. It was a judgment louder than any scream. Inside the house, the atmosphere was suffocating. I went to my office to check my work emails, hoping for a distraction. My inbox was full. Subject: cancellation of contract. Dear Nadia, in light of recent events and the publicity surrounding your involvement in the Sterling case, we feel it is best to part ways on the renovation project. We wish you the best. It was from the Henderson estate, my biggest client. I sat back in my chair, the leather creaking beneath me. I felt small. I felt dirty. For years, I had built this life, this persona of the perfect, charitable, successful woman. I was the one people came to for help. I was the one who knew best. Now, I was a pariah. I decided I needed to get out. I needed to do something normal to prove that my life was not over. I grabbed my keys and drove to the upscale grocery store in the town center. It was a mistake. As I pushed my cart down the aisle, I felt the eyes. People in this town whispered. They did not confront. They stood in clusters by the organic produce, glancing at me and then leaning in to murmur to one another. Did you hear? She paid for the lawyer. I heard she wrote the fake police report herself. No, she just gave the crazy woman money. $50,000. Can you imagine? I kept my head down, gripping the handle of the cart until my knuckles turned white. I focused on the items on the shelves. Pasta sauce, olive oil, crackers. I turned the corner into the dairy aisle and nearly collided with a woman. It was Jessica, a friend I had known for years. We had gone to yoga together. We had shared mimosas at brunch. Oh, Jessica, I said, forcing a smile. I am so glad to see a friendly face. Jessica recoiled. She actually took a step back, pulling her cart with her. Nadia, she said, her voice cool and distant. Saudinghaling. 2 hashes greater than I have not heard from you in a while. I stammered. Look, Nadia, Jessica said, looking around to see if anyone was watching. It is probably best if we give it some space. You know how it is. My husband, Xiao Yijing Haoling, 2# is greater than he does business with Jay's firm. It is awkward. Xiao Yijing Haoling, 2# is greater than awkward. A man had been accused of beating his child. A 5-year-old boy had been pinched and bruised by his own mother. I had been manipulated into funding a crime, and to Jessica, it was just awkward. I understand, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I left my cart there, in the middle of the dairy aisle, half full of groceries I did not need. I walked out of the store, my cheeks burning with shame. I sat in my car in the parking lot and watched the people walking by. They looked so normal, so happy. They did not carry the weight I was carrying. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Mark. Jay just called. He is not pressing charges against you for defamation. He said you suffered enough. I stared at the screen. He was letting me go. He was showing me mercy. But as I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror, at the woman who had been so sure of her own righteousness, I realized that his mercy was worse than a lawsuit. A lawsuit I could fight, a lawsuit I could pay off. But his pity? His pity meant that I was not a villain worthy of destruction. I was just a fool worthy of contempt. I started the car. The engine purred to life, a sound of expensive engineering that felt mocking now. I drove home to my big, empty house, where the silence was waiting to swallow me whole. The community had spoken. I was no longer one of them. I was the woman who had let the devil in, and no amount of money or apologies could scrub that stain from my name. The silence in the house was different now. It was no longer the tense, loaded silence of secrets being kept. It was the hollow, echoing silence of an aftermath. It was the sound of a bomb that had already detonated, leaving nothing but dust settling on the ruins. Mark and I were trying. We were sitting at the dinner table, eating a meal that the housekeeper, Maria, had prepared before she left for the day. Maria was quieter now, too. She moved around me warily, as if failure were contagious. "Can you pass the salt?" Mark asked. I handed him the shaker. Our fingers brushed for a fleeting second, and I flinched, not because I was afraid of him, but because I was ashamed. Every time he looked at me, I wondered if he was remembering the night I called him a coward. I wondered if he was remembering how I had chosen a liar over him. "I went to therapy today," I said, breaking the quiet. Mark paused, his fork hovering over his steak. "How was it?" "Dr. Evans says I have a lot of work to do. She says my need to save people is actually a need for control. I look for broken people because they are easy to manage. Or at least, I think they are." Mark chewed slowly. He did not offer a platitude. He did not say, "It will be okay." He just nodded. That sounds like a fair assessment. The honesty stung, but I accepted it. I deserved the sting. I missed the money. "Mark," I blurted out, not the money itself, but what it represented. That $50,000 was for the lake house. It was for our future, and I just... Xiaoyuting Haoling. 2# is greater than I burned it. Mark put down his fork. He wiped his mouth with a napkin and looked me in the eye. "We can make more money, Nadia, but you need to understand something. You did not just burn money, you burned trust. You looked at me, your husband of 10 years, and you decided I was the enemy because a woman you barely knew told you a sad story." "I know," I whispered, looking down at my plate. "I know. It is going to take a long time. Nadia, I am not leaving. I love you, but I do not trust your judgment anymore. Not right now." His words were heavy stones, piling onto my chest. I wanted to cry, to beg, to promise I would change, but promises were cheap. I had made plenty of promises to myself when I wrote that check to Dana. The next morning, I drove by the old Victorian house on Elm Street, the one Jay and Dana used to live in. It was sold now. I had heard Jay had moved Leo to a new house in a different town, far away from the memories. I parked the car and just looked at it. It was a beautiful house, wraparound porch, big oak trees. It looked like the perfect place to raise a family. How many times did I drive past here and imagine horrors happening inside? I thought, how many times did I project my own fantasies of heroism onto those walls? I closed my eyes and I could still see the video. Dana's hand pinching Leo's leg. The cold calculation in her eyes. I felt a wave of nausea. It was a physical reaction now. Whenever I thought of her, my stomach turned. I drove to the bank. I had an appointment with my financial advisor. I needed to assess the damage to my business. With 3 major clients gone, I was looking at a 30% loss in revenue for the year. I would have to lay off my assistant, Sarah, who had just bought her first apartment. Sarah, who looked up to me. I sat in the plush leather chair in the bank manager's office, listening to him talk about restructuring and mitigating losses. I felt detached. The numbers on the page meant nothing. All I could think about was the ripple effect. My arrogance had been a stone thrown into a pond. The ripples had hit Jay. They had hit Leo. Now they were hitting Mark, hitting Sarah, hitting my reputation. When I walked out of the bank, I saw a woman walking, a small boy holding a red balloon. The boy tripped and scraped his knee. He started to cry. The mother knelt down immediately, kissing the scrape, murmuring soft words. I watched them, mesmerized. It was such a simple, instinctual act of love. Dana never did that. I realized, even when she was pretending, her eyes were always darting around, looking for an audience. She never looked at Leo. She looked at who was watching her with Leo. I walked back to my car, feeling a profound sense of emptiness. The adrenaline of the drama was gone. The righteous fury was gone. The savior complex was shattered. What was left was just me, Nadia Vance, a woman who was not as smart as she thought she was. A woman who was not as good as she thought she was. I got into the car and gripped the steering wheel. I will fix this. The old voice whispered in my head. No. I answered it aloud. No, I will not fix this. I will live with it. I started the engine. Living with it was harder. Fixing things was about erasing the problem, making it look like it never happened. Living with it meant looking at the scar every single day and remembering how you got it. I drove home, the road stretching out before me, gray and unyielding. I had a long way to go before I could forgive myself, and I had a feeling that the road to Mark's forgiveness was even longer. But for the first time in a long time, I was driving with my eyes open. 6 months had passed since the gavel fell. The autumn leaves were beginning to rot on the perfectly manicured lawns of Westport, turning from vibrant gold to a sludge of brown. It was a fitting metaphor for my life. The scandal had faded, replaced in the local gossip mill by a banker who had run off with his au pair. But the stain on my reputation remained. I had lost clients. I had lost friends. But Mark and I were still here. We were rebuilding, brick by painful brick. That morning, I sat on the patio with a cup of tea that had gone cold. My phone buzzed on the glass table. It was an email from Jay. I hesitated before opening it. Every time I saw his name, I felt a phantom ache in my chest, a reminder of the damage I had caused. But I clicked it. There was no text, just a photograph. It was Leo. He was standing in a pumpkin patch, wearing a thick wool sweater that looked a size too big. He was holding a pumpkin almost as large as his head, but it was his face that made my breath catch. He was smiling, a real, toothy smile that reached his eyes. The dark circles were gone. The fear that used to haunt his gaze, the look of a child constantly waiting for the next pinch or slap, had vanished. He is safe. I whispered to the empty garden. I closed the email. That should have been the end of the story. The villain was in prison. The hero had his son, and the foolish accomplice had learned her lesson. But life is not a fairy tale, and monsters do not stop being monsters just because you put them in a cage. The mail carrier arrived, dropping a stack of envelopes through the slot in the front door. I went inside to retrieve them. Among the bills and flyers was a plain white envelope with no return address. I ripped it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a printed photograph. It was a letter from a woman named Brenda, an old acquaintance from my charity circle who volunteered at the women's correctional facility where Dana was serving her sentence. Nadia. The note read in scrawled cursive, "I thought you should see this. I visited the facility yesterday. She has not changed. She has only adapted." I looked at the photograph. The quality was grainy, likely taken surreptitiously. It showed the prison cafeteria. There, sitting at a metal table, was Dana. She was wearing a drab beige jumpsuit that hung loosely on her frame. But she was not eating alone. She was not cowering in fear. She was holding the hand of another inmate, a large, formidable woman with tattoos climbing up her neck. Dana was leaning in close, her head tilted at that perfect, vulnerable angle. Her eyes were wide and glistening with unshed tears. She looked fragile. She looked like a broken bird that needed protecting. The woman opposite her was listening intently, her face twisted in sympathy and anger. She was pushing her own tray of food toward Dana. I read the rest of Brenda's note. She is telling everyone that she was framed. She has spun a story about a corrupt billionaire husband who bought the judge, and a jealous, barren best friend who conspired to steal her child. She has the biggest inmate in the block protecting her. She has people putting money in her commissary account. She is the queen of cell block C. I let the photo drop to the kitchen counter. A chill ran through me, colder than the November wind outside. I had thought that by exposing her, I had stripped her of her power. I thought that without her freedom, without her looks, without my money, she would be nothing. I was wrong. Dana Miller did not need money or freedom to be dangerous. She only needed a listener. She only needed someone with a savior complex, someone who needed to feel like a hero. I walked to the window and looked out at my reflection in the glass. I looked older. The lines around my eyes were deeper. The $50,000 was gone forever. The innocence was gone forever. I picked up the photo of Dana one last time. In that grainy image, I saw the truth that terrified me more than anything else. She was happy. She was thriving because she had found a new host. I struck a match and held it to the corner of the photograph. I watched the flame curl the edges, eating away at Dana's face, turning her lies into ash. I dropped it into the sink and watched it burn until there was nothing left but black dust. Mark walked into the kitchen. He saw the smoke, saw my pale face. "Is everything okay?" he asked. I washed the ash down the drain. "Yes," I said, turning to him. "Everything is fine." But as I looked at my husband, the man I had almost sacrificed for a lie. I knew the real lesson I would carry for the rest of my life. You can expose the lie, you can punish the liar, but you can never truly kill the demon. Devils do not change. They just change victims. And I was just grateful, truly grateful, that the victim was no longer me.